Am I blurry? I left teaching just 425 days after my first day of training. Over the last year, I've met around 1,000 students. I've taught history, geography, modern studies, religious education. I've worked in 4 different schools and taught around 400 lessons. I've met some incredible young people, friends and teachers along the way. I've also had multiple mental breakdowns and anxiety attacks and crying on a weekly, if not daily basis. And so in October 2023, I decided to quit my teaching job. I started my channel with the aim of documenting my teaching journey, and after a lot of deliberation of whether or not to make this video, I decided I should because leaving is part of my teaching journey. I want to talk about why I went into teaching in the first place and my experience of the PGDE programme, and then why I decided to leave ultimately, and why I didn't just leave in the first week or the first month or even the first 6 months, why it took me over a year to decide to leave. So why did I want to teach in the first place? There are loads of different reasons, but my main reason was I wanted to work with young people, and I think lots of other people that go into teaching would say the same. I've worked with young people in a variety of different part-time jobs that I did alongside my history degree. I worked as a support worker for children with autism, I worked in an after-school club, and I also travelled across the world and worked in an all-girls summer camp in America. And each of those roles I loved so much, and so teaching for me felt like a natural progression. I also loved history, and so again, becoming a history teacher made sense to me. It just allowed me to align my interests and my passion for working with young people and my love for history as well. Teaching is also a very family-friendly career, or that was my assumption going into the job, that I would have my holidays off and my weekends off, and it's my plan to start a family. I want more than anything to have kids, and so this career for me was going to allow me to do that and be off with my kids at the same time as their schools. So yeah, that was another thing that attracted me to the job. I think there were around 300 candidates being interviewed for the History PGDE programme and less than 20 places. It's a really competitive programme to get into in Scotland, and I think that's because it's not a subject that's as high in demand, so there was less demand for history teachers, so there's a smaller number of spaces on the university course. I just really couldn't believe it when I got in. This was a goal I'd been working towards from about my 2nd year of university, and so to get in first time I was just so excited. I just couldn't wait to start, and it was just something I'd worked really, really hard for, and I'd kind of tailored all my part-time experiences to put on my application, and I just couldn't believe it when I got in. I was so excited. So what was my experience of the PGDE programme? Just for anyone that maybe isn't from Scotland or doesn't know what the PGDE programme is, it stands for a postgraduate diploma in education. It's a 1-year course delivered by universities in Scotland, and it allows you to work as a secondary school teacher. You just need your subject first. You need a degree in your subject, in my case history. The PGDE year was one of the most challenging years of my life. It was so difficult. At the University of Edinburgh, which is where I did it, it was split into 18 weeks of placement and 18 weeks of university coursework and studying. The 18 weeks on placement are broken up into 3 placements at Edinburgh Uni, so you went to 3 different schools, and during that time you're observing other teachers, you're planning and delivering lessons, you're getting feedback on those lessons, you're critically reflecting on your practice and what went well, what didn't go so well, and all the while you're also trying to keep your portfolio up to date, which is like a portfolio of evidence to go towards you getting this qualification at the end of it. Alongside your placements, you've got uni. While you're at uni, you're going to lectures and seminars and completing coursework. I met the most amazing people on my PGDE programme. My mentor was wonderful, the people I was working alongside were amazing. I just met some of the most amazing people, and I'm so grateful to have been part of that group that went through that PGDE year, because they were just incredible. I really enjoyed the uni aspect of it, learning about teaching and learning about motivation and engagement and how to support EAL students or students with additional support needs, and learning about how trauma informs, learning and development. All of that I found really, really interesting, and I really enjoyed the university element of the PGDE course. The placements were terrifying. That very first week I definitely had my doubts. In most new jobs, or any new job I've had in the past, there's been some sort of training period where you're shadowing others and you undergo training and they build you up to starting the job, right? Teaching, while you could argue the PGDE program is one big induction period, I would say teaching is unlike any other job I've ever done before. You are metaphorically thrown into the deep end, and it's very much sink or swim. And so after 1 week in the school of observing other teachers, I was thrown into the deep end and I was stood in front of 30 young people teaching a lesson. And I've never had a job like that where you're just thrown into it, and it really was scary. At that point I felt like a complete imposter. You're kind of just mimicking what you've seen teachers do already. You have no idea how to teach or run a room, or you don't even know your own teacher personality, and so it's wild. It was crazy. Trying to bridge that gap between the theory and actually being in the classroom and putting it into practice, I found bridging that gap to be really difficult. On top of all that, you're in an unfamiliar environment that you don't know, surrounded by colleagues that you don't know, surrounded by students that you've never met. You're trying to teach them in a room that isn't yours. You've not got any routines established with them or any structures, so there's very little trust there from the students, and so it makes teaching really, really difficult in a placement, and you're only there for a couple weeks, right? 6-7 weeks, so it's, for loads of different reasons, placement is challenging. I was really fortunate to be well supported on all my placements by my mentors, but not everyone has that similar experience. But I was really lucky, and by some miracle I made it through the 7 weeks. I just kind of got into the rhythm of things and came out at the end of it, and I passed, which was great. I then went back to university for a couple weeks. Well, it was 2 months where you're building up your knowledge of teaching and learning and assessment, and then it came to start placement 2 in another school. And by that point I think I was fooled by my own confidence of knowing that I survived the first time. I can do this again. I've done it once, I can do it again. But also at the same time you have this horrible feeling in the pit of your stomach of flight or fight, because you know how difficult placement is. It's exhausting and it's tiring and it's stressful and draining, and that was also kicking in as well. I really started to struggle in placement 2, and my main struggle was with planning lessons. I still don't know what it is to this day, but there's some part of my brain, some part of a perfectionist part of my brain that finds planning lessons almost unbearable. The main thing I struggled with was that chunk in a lesson between the starter and the plenary, that main activity, and I would question myself and doubt myself, and it was something that was never explicitly taught on the PGDE programme. It was kind of just assumed that we'd pick up activity ideas along the way. Being unable to generate ideas because I'd never been taught, and constantly questioning my justification for the ideas I did come up with, I ended up just paralysing myself with indecision, and that's definitely what I struggled with the most. I'm still struggling with this decision-making aspect of being a history teacher, having to choose what topics to teach, what topics to cut out. History is so vast and it's overwhelming, but there's always more to explore. Whereas in school you've got a couple lessons to focus on a really small chunk of history. I just never got it, and I was aiming for these perfect lessons. I was striving for the perfect lesson, and in my head I was trying to achieve all these different competing aims. I wanted there to be a good balance between teacher talk and student-led learning. I wanted there to be a balance between individual and group work. I wanted to have a variety of inputs like videos, engaging in creative worksheets. I wanted the work to be challenging and yet well scaffolded and supported. I wanted to meet all the different needs from EAL to dyslexia. I wanted all my PowerPoints to be inclusive. I wanted my resources to be inclusive. I was trying to do all of this after only teaching for just 8 weeks. And as a result, I ended up falling short and struggling with the basics, like timing or formatively assessing at the end of a lesson to see what they'd learned. It was getting to 2 months down the line, 8, 9, 10 weeks into teaching, and I still couldn't tell you what a child had learned by the end of a 50-minute lesson with me in history. I was struggling with the really, really basic stuff because I was trying so hard to create this perfect lesson. As a result, I started staying up later and later at night and getting up earlier and earlier. So I was staying up till past midnight and getting up around 5 in the morning, if not earlier, sometimes, to plan before and after school. I'm so not ready. I'm tired, I'm exhausted. I was up till 1 and then I got up at 5. It's just been a bit of a disaster. But fingers crossed. We're gonna get it out of the way. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be okay. I'm so tired. Oh my god. Okay. I was coming in, like, rushing to shower. I would breathe in my food and then I would sit at the computer and plan, and I would do whatever it would take to minimise time in between. I wasn't doing any exercise. I was barely spending time with my partner, if at all. I was doing nothing for me, like self-care. I was just planning. I was eating, sleeping, going to placement and planning. That's all I was doing for hours. And I was exhausted and drained and just miserable. My mental and physical health had never been worse during that second placement, and it just kept getting worse. So why didn't I leave? At this point, I'm only 2 placements in. I'm about halfway through the course and I'm thinking, maybe I'm gonna get this planning thing. I'm a big believer in that if something's worth doing, then it's not going to be easy. It takes hard work and commitment, and I really thought that this was just going to take time to get. I hadn't got it yet, but with time and perseverance and practice, I would get better at planning. So that's kind of a big reason I didn't leave at that point. And so again, by another miracle, I passed placement 2. I went back to uni for a bit, and then it was time for the final placement. My anxiety and mental health in placement 3 was definitely at its worst. I think I'd made the false assumption going into the PGDE programme that by the end of the year, like by placement 3, I'd pretty much be a teacher. And I couldn't have been further from the truth. By placement 3, I was still struggling with basics, like timing, planning, everything. I was struggling with everything, and I was feeling more and more like a failure. And by this point in placement 3, I was only 3 months away from having my own classroom. I was almost finished the course. I'd be responsible for lots of different classes and taking them through national qualifications, and I was nowhere near ready, not even a little bit. I passed placement 3 by, again, some miracle, literally crawling over the finish line, and I graduated from the PGDE programme. So why didn't I leave then? Why didn't I leave at the end of placement 3? It was too painful to think that I'd committed myself to a year of learning, a year of going to university and studying and learning, and for it all to be thrown away. I couldn't face that. It was too painful to think that I'd failed and that I'd wasted time and money and energy investing into a career that I wasn't going to pursue. That was a difficult pill to swallow, and I wasn't ready to swallow it by the end of placement 3. I really thought, if I keep going, I'm gonna get it and I'll be okay. Even though I'm miserable and exhausted, I'll be okay. I also wanted to start working, and I want a family, and this job would provide that certainty that I needed. Leaving would mean a career change, it would mean uncertainty, and I couldn't face that again after committing a year of my life to it. But 7 weeks into my probation year, I left. I quit my job. I was burnt out. I was failing myself and the students, which really sucked because the young people were the best part of the job. Actually being in the room with young people and supporting them and watching them grow and develop was amazing and rewarding and gratifying, and even just to be a tiny little part of their journey was a privilege. And so it just sucked. It sucked to leave because I really loved working with them. But I was mentally and physically drained. I was staying up late, I was getting up early, and I had no work-life balance. By this point, I was crying regularly, on the daily. I was suffering anxiety attacks. I was experiencing dizziness and like weird health problems, like pains in places I don't even want to mention because this is the internet and it's too much information, but my health was not okay. And so 425 days after starting teaching, I left. And honestly, the day I did leave, I had no regrets. It just felt like the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders. So how am I feeling now? At first I was a little bit depressed. I didn't regret my decision, but I definitely felt like a failure. I'd worked so hard to pass through the year, and I'd worked so hard to get to that point, and I really thought this was going to be the career for me. So for it to not turn out that way, and to now face the uncertainty of changing to another career and then possibly failing again, I felt like crap. I also felt like I'd let myself down. I felt like I'd let my family down, who had emotionally supported me, financially supported me, I just felt like I'd let everybody down, but especially myself. But having had time to process everything over the last couple of weeks and apply for new jobs, and I've got a job lined up in January, I finally felt ready to make this video on why I left. I'm feeling a lot better now, and I'm trying to enjoy this transitional period in my life, and even though it's filled with uncertainty, it's also exciting. It means new adventures are on the horizon, and it's okay not to know where they might take me yet. I feel like there's all this pressure to have everything figured out in your early 20s, and there's also this pressure to have your career underway in your 20s, and I feel like the internet doesn't help. Watching other people and their successes when you don't often see their failures can be difficult, and I think that's another reason why I wanted to make this video. So I know I'm not a failure, I just failed at teaching. I know that after going through this year, I can tackle any new challenge I'm faced with. I'm more resilient, I'm more confident, and I know now, because of this experience, what I want from a job, which is work-life balance more than anything. If you're going through a similar journey or a career change or just a period of uncertainty in your life, I hope this resonates with you. Don't compare your journey to anyone else's. Failing is part of being human, and it's how we grow and learn, and that's something I used to tell my students all the time, and yet it's something I never believed myself. But it's part of growing. And if the experience doesn't work out, you'll still make friends and memories and have something to learn and grow from and a story to tell. So yeah, I'm not a failure, I just failed at teaching. I'm 24 and unemployed and don't know what I'm doing, and that's okay. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.